Hey everyone, Sean Banks here, and welcome to episode 3 of Crafting an Effective Message. Thank you for everybody who has hung in with me throughout this entire series, ever since from beginning episode 1. Um, and I'm hoping that you finding a lot of value from the content I have been putting together, and hopefully you're taking the content that I put together and using it to craft your own effective messaging for the prospects that you're reaching out to. Now, if you remember from episode 2, we actually sat down together and we put together the message that we were going to send to our prospect. And in this case, our prospect is Shireline Ads. And definitely want to give Shire and her team a shout out for allowing me to use their business as an example as I put together the series. But in episode 2, we put together that email message and we spent the entire time putting together that message. And what I want to focus on here in episode 3 is how do you actually build a cadence around that message. And then one thing I've noticed for small business owners, for people who are new to sales, people who are just trying to figure out how to get their foot in the door with their prospects, I noticed that they always tend to send one email or make one call and they don't follow up after. And I can tell you right now that following up with a prospect is the one of the key ways to actually get them to want to actually move forward, whether it's having a discovery meeting, whether it's seeing a demo, whatever outcome that you want to see happen from that prospect. And it's really important that you have some type of cadence with your messaging. And if you don't have a cadence put together, then I highly encourage you to start thinking about after you send your first email or do your first call, what is email number 2 going to look like? What about email number 3? What are you going to do in email number 4? So the whole purpose of today's episode is I want to introduce to you what that cadence could look like. I also have an example cadence that I have put together that I'm going to share my screen in just a few minutes and share with you all today. But I really want you to think about how are you going to provide value with every touch point that you have with your prospect to get them to want to have that next meeting with you? So that's just something I want you to think about during today's call. And again, if you have questions, if you're really trying to figure out how you can implement this in your business, no, definitely feel free to ask those questions in the comments below. Uh, I'll definitely get back to you and respond to you. With whenever I have the availability. But I definitely want to make sure that, if you're taking this content and you're using it in real time for your business, that you're doing it in a way that you're going to find success. So with that being said, I'm going to actually share my screen and I'm going to share with you the cadence that I put together for Shire Lion um, and her business. So that being said, here's my Word document. This is the cadence that I built together for Shire Lion's ad for me to be able to, get a meeting with Shire and her team. Now, the first email that I sent out or here is not the one that I created in episode 2. This is a whole brand new first email that I created. And I know in episode 2, we spent a lot of time crafting that message because I really wanted you to see my thought process, what I actually take into consideration when I'm creating that message. But I went ahead and I just created my whole email cadence from scratch. And to make this more effective and beneficial for your time, I thought it would be better for me to share with you, what I put together and my thought process and just talk with you about how I would do things as far as my cadence. Now, I want to start with, what is a cadence and what does that cadence look like? So that cadence is going to be your pre-set up chain of touch points that you're going to have, with your prospect. Now, keep in mind, your cadence is going to be a mixture of a lot of different things. It's not just going to be email. It's going to be consistent of calls. It may be you reaching out on LinkedIn to your prospect. It could be you sending out videos to your prospect. Your cadence is going to be personalized touch points that's going to get them closer to the outcome that you want them to take. So I just want to have you keep in mind like what a cadence is. Um, and I also want to share with you what that's going to look like. So for example, email 1, I have here, I'm sharing a trend, I'm sharing some information with my prospect, whether it be an analytical trend, something that could be that's on the news that could be impacting them. Maybe I'm sharing them some information, some starter information at that about the business that about my business. And then after I send this first email, maybe I wait a couple of days for the response. And then maybe my email number two is going to be a win story. Maybe I want to talk to them about a recent client that I had and how I actually went and helped them with their problems and challenges. And then again, after I send out email two, maybe I'm sending them a short video. Maybe it's something that I recorded personally, so that way they can get to see who I am as a person. Maybe it's a video that I had recorded or a commercial of my business. Uh, just thinking of different ways of like how I can actually position, my products and services to Shire. Email number four could be, one last question. And one last question could be like, hey, before I, you know, before I move on to my next prospect, before I actually change the reason for why I'm reaching out, let me ask that one last question in order to, get them to respond back to me. And then email number five is my pivot email. A lot of people would say breakup email. It's the same thing here, but a little bit different. Um, Pivot emails is just me introducing a whole nother topic for me to start a whole new cadence. And you can still send out breakup emails and still say like, hey, this will be the last time I'm reaching out to you. But for me, I like to keep it so that I'm not really closing the door on my prospect. What I'm doing is I'm closing it still, but I'm leaving that door open for me to come back in and talk about something completely different. So that's just something you want to keep in mind. And that's why I like saying pivot emails instead of breakup emails, because depending on the rep, the business owner, however they want to word their breakup email, sometimes it could just close doors and burn bridges that you necessarily don't want to burn when it could be someone that could potentially reach back out to you and that wants to do business with you. So that's just something you want to keep in mind. But you see how like my cadence is structured. I know for every email what I'm going to do to insert value with every touch point to make them want to actually, have a conversation. So let's take a look real quick at email number one, sharing trend information. I'm not going to read the entire email, but I do want to, just give you a little glimpse of like what I'm doing here in every touch point um, that provides value. So here with this email, um, so I'm bringing to the forefront a specific problem or challenge that a lot of businesses like Shire has that they are facing. And what I'm doing is I'm introducing what my service can do to actually help Shire and her team. And that's just email one. I'm just sharing a trend, and I'm sharing just a little bit of information just to get Shire curious. Now, most times a lot of your prospects will not respond to email one, but sometimes email two is sometimes where you really is where you really get them. And one thing I'll say too, don't think that you have to get your prospects to respond on just email one or email two. The whole purpose of this cadence is you just want to build curiosity. And when you build that curiosity to a point to where they're okay, Sean said something that's really caught my attention. That's what we're looking for. We're looking to build that curiosity with every touch point. Email two is a win story. So with this one, I'm actually talking about a recent customer that I actually helped, and I'm also going to do a separate video on win stories too, because a lot of people, what I've seen is that when they do win stories, they don't do it in a way that's effective enough to actually get across, what could be the benefit to them and how you can actually replicate that success of that previous client to the prospect you're reaching out now. So be on the lookout. That's going to be a video that's probably going to come out sometime soon. And I think it's a really good way for you to actually leverage your cadences and even your prospecting to talk about those other clients that you've helped before. But sharing that one story is definitely a big way in order to build that curiosity and probably also introduce something new to your prospect. Email number three is a short video. This is where you're recording a video of yourself. Like I said, you could be sending a commercial of your video to your prospect, showing them, I don't know, how your products and services can help businesses like theirs. For me, for a short video, I just like to, use something like a Loom, and I'll just record myself doing a quick 30 seconds or 1 minute, introducing myself so they can put a face to the name, and I can actually speak to them about the problem that I'm actually helping them solve. And then email number four, last question. I like this type of email because now I am giving the prospect a little bit of an incentive to want to respond to my email. And what I like about this is just this last line down here. Before I take your silence as disinterest. Sometimes I'll say, before I take you off my list, let me ask you one last question. And this is also a good tactic or technique to actually use on your code calls if you're doing that as well, because it just gives the prospect, like I said, that incentive to be like, hey, you know what? If this is what's going to keep Sean from reaching out to me, let me just answer this question real quick. And sometimes if you have the right question, you're going to strike up a conversation that's going to keep the prospect, engaged with you and wanting to have a conversation to dive deeper. And that's kind of like what I'm creating here with email number four with that last question. So I kind of like that. And I've seen where I've actually booked meetings off using email number four, using that last question strategy. And then email number five, like I mentioned before, the pivot email. This is like my Hail Mary that I'm throwing to the prospect to get them to respond before I move on to the next prospect, or even change up the entire reason why I'm reaching out to this prospect in the first place. So you're pretty much putting all your eggs in this one basket of an email. So this is something that can make it break you. But it's very good that you're using something like a pivot email, because now you can change, like I said, the whole reason why you're reaching out to a prospect in the first place. So if you're selling multiple services, multiple products, this is a great tactic to use to actually reintroduce a whole new cadence and a whole new reason for like why the prospect should be having a conversation with you. With that being said, now this is what the cadence could look like for you. One thing too, you can always, mix and match how you do your cadence. So like you could do your short video as your email number one. No, email number two could be your last question. Email number three could be your win story. It doesn't have to be in the same order that I did it. No, play around with it and see what works for you. What you may find is that different emails will get certain prospects to respond to you a lot quicker. And that's what we want. We want to get that yes or a no a lot quicker so that we can move on to the next prospect that's going to be willing to, put time on our calendar for us to have an in-depth conversation. So that being said, I'm curious to hear from you all. What part of this email cadence stood out to you? Which one are you looking forward to implementing in your sales process? If you would like for me to send this cadence to you specifically, put it in the comments, your email address, and I'll send it to you via email in a PDF version. But with that being said, that concludes our conversation for today in episode three. Uh, so again, if you take away anything from today's episode, really put a emphasis on the cadence that you're building out for your prospects. Do not just send one email, do not just do one call and call it quits because all you hear is crickets. You got to be intentional about how you're following up. And if you're going to follow up, make sure that you're inserting value with every touch point throughout your cadence, whether whether it's a video, whether it's a trend or a statistic, maybe it's a question that's going to change how the prospect completely thinks about their business. You really want to be very intentional on how you're going about getting your prospect's attention. So that being said, thank you for joining me today for episode three. I'm looking forward to sharing more content with you and wrapping up this four-part series in my next and final episode. So with that being said, take these tips, take the content, implement it into your sales process. And if there's anywhere that I can help specifically, feel free to reach out to me. With that being said, enjoy the rest of your day.